How the f did this happen? How the f did this happen? Was this a bug?
In Bright, Los Angeles police officer Will Smith is having bad days at the office now that he's been partnered with the first ever Orc police officer. And this day is about to get even worse when they stumble across a magic wand which prompts the whole city to come after them to steal it. Other cops, human gangs, orc gangs, and even dark elves seeking to resurrect the Dark Lord. Bad day at the office indeed. And at first glance, Bright should be an amazing movie because the idea for it is amazing. Lord of the Rings set in modern day Los Angeles as a police crime story. Hell yeah, there's so much to do. You can mix cool fantasy stuff with a grounded reality and stand out instantly. You can talk about real topics through fantasy metaphors, like with orcs representing the minority, humans representing middle class, and elves who live in a fancy walled community of their own representing crypto investors. But still, as the Hollywood story so often goes, Bright failed badly. It sucked big time, and pretty much all discussion you'll find about it is highly negative and even ridiculing.
You stink like shit. Can you sit back? Thank you.
Which is fairly strange, cause I mean, how the hell can an idea so unique and intriguing and full of potential as this go so terribly wrong? Well, because of some idea-related filmmaking pitfalls that takes that potential away. The extraordinary world is made to seem ordinary. The special elements are left unutilized in favor of unspecial ones, and the main characters are too weak to stand out from under the idea.
I'm straight. I don't need no physical love.
Can't hide it, Wood. Humans have physical tells.
And so today, let's dive into that topic to learn how great movie ideas can turn to mush and what to do to avoid that. How to avoid being a Bright. The first idea-ruining problem here is that the extraordinary world is introduced in a very ordinary way, which makes it seem like a big meh. If you look at the opening, for example, you can notice that it consists of things that most other crime movie worlds also consist of. Will Smith is begrudgingly partnered with another cop he doesn't like and gets shot on the field. And now he wakes up from a nightmare about it at home sometime later. He meets his nagging wife, who's a nurse, like all movie wives always are. He talks with his young daughter, who fears for him due to what he does for a living, and the thing he worries about most is his retirement pension to be able to pay bills. All of which you have seen in other cop movies and even in other Will Smith movies I've covered before.
Mom said that Nick got you in trouble because orcs are dumb.
That's not true.
Mama says I can't live with you because you kill people.
That's not true. That's a lie. I'm gonna retire. I can't f up my pension.
2 days to retirement.
To be fair, there is an extraordinary side attached to this, like the fact that Will Smith's partner is the first ever orc police officer called Jakoby. But still, the issue is that whatever extraordinary the movie introduces, it always does in the least significant way possible. The first time we see an orc is when Jakoby is buying a burrito.
That's awesome.
There's a fairy in Will Smith's backyard, and all that leads to is him whacking it down like a common insect.
Fairy lives don't matter today.
Will Smith and Jakoby drive through the Elf district walled off from the rest of the city, and nothing happens in there.
I hate Elf Town.
We come across a crazy guy wielding a sword, who then puts the sword down and gives up when he's told to.
Alright, damn.
Altogether, our first morning in this amazing world mostly consists of pretty mundane activity. Dressing up for work, sitting in a meeting at work, and then basically just driving around chatting about whatever.
Humans doesn't get any more pancakes.
Ah, man, too many bills to pay.
I hear you.
I thought you were out having your, like, zillionth baby.
Nah, man.
And in some sense, I understand this choice. The whole idea is that the story is set in a modern day where Lord of the Rings stuff is the norm, so to treat it as a norm does make sense. But at the same time, extraordinary ideas feel extraordinary only when they're treated as such. This world needed to be introduced in a much more impactful way, with more significant world challenges to deal with more practical differences between the races on show, with the kind of stuff that makes the audience go, holy hell, this world is super fascinating and I want to get into it. But that wasn't done.
Come on.
The amazing world is brought to life in such a mundane, everyday manner that the audience learns to see it as such. Oh, I guess a modern world where Lord of the Rings is real isn't that fascinating. For instance, I do think the magic elf characters have a lot of potential to be interesting, but because our initial introduction to them happens through cops giving exposition about them,
So Layla has a magic wand that she's coming after Tika, right?
they don't seem so. It's like watching a WWE match with terrible walkouts, with the referee explaining the beef between the characters as they walk out. The introduction to something doesn't work if the presentation doesn't reflect what it really is.
What is that? Why is Michael just lying there? Well, why are Helmsley? Slow down and stop! What is it? It's a mockery. We thought that... Oh!
The point is that having an extraordinary world is not enough. The only way it will seem extraordinary to the audience is when introduced like so. If you make it seem like a no big deal,
Don't give a shit.
that's how it's gonna come off. Another idea-ruining problem here is that special elements born from the idea are not used or even really present, which is almost the same as not having them at all. One side of this is very literal, in that a lot of the stuff you see in the background is left there. We drive through Elf Town, but we do nothing in there. We see a horseman standing there and that's it. We see a dragon in the sky once and then never again. We come across an ancient sword, which then disappears. We hear a lot of hype about a Dark Lord from the past.
Once with the Dark Lord, always with the Dark Lord. They're gonna bring back the Dark Lord.
They're aiding the return of the Dark Lord, so he can slaughter billions.
But then we never actually see anything of him or his powers. And it is a bummer to get all these glimpses of special things that never become anything.
The Dark Lord's coming.
So that was a f***ing lie.
But this issue is even more apparent in the things that the movie does do, starting with the action. Basically, Will Smith and Jakoby respond to a call about suspicious activity, and then they get into their first big altercation. And what is that in practice? Well, that's right. The first big action scene in this movie about fantasy and magic is a normal shootout with guns. And after the heroes go inside and find the magic elf girl, the same continues. They get car chased by a human gang and there's a bunch of shooting. They run into a rundown building to catch their breath and there's a bunch of punching and shooting. They go into a club and, you know. And although there's nothing wrong with these action scenes, what is wrong with them? The fact that what they do can be done by every other movie. Even if my movie didn't have any Lord of the Rings fantasy stuff, in practice I could do most of the same, which kind of defeats the point of having it, right? To be clear, there is special fantasy stuff in here. The first crime scene has evidence about dark magic, and once we find the elf girl, it turns out that she's carrying a magic wand.
This is like a nuclear weapon that grants wishes.
A wand that makes possible things that the average man can only dream of.
You want $1 million? 10 million? Make your dick bigger? That's how you do it right there.
But in practice, none of that exists. We don't see any money-making or shape-shifting or anything magical of the sort. Most often, all we see the wand do is cause explosions. I mean, the first time we come across it, it blows up a car like a bazooka.
What is that? What is that?
And if what it does can be done by a normal thing like a bazooka, then what's the point of it? It should do something only it can do. For instance, maybe the wand yeets the car into the atmosphere, or maybe it turns it into dust. Now you'd be getting into something most movies can't.
It's a magic wand.
My point isn't that the action or content here is bad. It's not bad. I think some of it is really well made. And some of the special fantasy stuff is very present as well. Like how the central conflict in the main relationship is about the notion that orcs always side with orcs. That's great.
You let the shooter go, didn't you? Because he was clan blood?
But still, most of the movie's specialty is not used to do special things. The elf girl is a bright, able to use magic, but what does she mostly do in practice? She does backflips and front flips, and she tosses canisters at enemies. The elf villains looking for the wand are magical servants of the Dark Lord, but what do they do in practice? They shoot people and they punch and knife people. And to stop the heroes, they drive a car into a store and shoot some more. And although this may be cool, it could be done by anyone in any movie. You don't need to be a magic elf to crash a car or shoot guns or even to do kung fu. And that is a bummer, because so much more could have been done. For instance, when the heroes get captured by a gang of orcs, something very unusual happens. Yes, the hero is shot dead, which can happen only because there's a wand that can resurrect him. While other movies would have had to stop before shooting the hero,
what happened? Ain't gonna blast him or what?
Who's telling the truth?
This movie with this special element can go further, and way more of that was needed. Because if you don't use your special idea to do special things only you can do, it's like buying a supercar and then only ever driving 50 like everyone else. Yeah, your car looks and sounds special, but I can do the same with any other car. Another idea-related problem here is that the characters are so weak and blank that they get lost underneath the idea. With the heroes, for example, there are things to like. Will Smith is Will Smith, and Jakoby has amazing makeup along with a convincing performance. You can enjoy spending time with them.
What's that face?
This human doesn't get any more pancakes.
But at the same time, they're both very generic and weak. Jakoby is part of a minority who gets bullied for that despite being nice to everyone, and aside from naiveness, he basically has no flaws.
So I did the right thing.
He's an all-around perfect, all-good person who knows everything and every language and still gets treated unfairly by an unfair society.
Be safe, guys.
Will Smith is a normal guy who doesn't necessarily like orcs, but also has no ill will against them. He's decent enough to know that discrimination is bad, and when the chips are down,
We are taking the wand and the orc dies.
he knows to do the right thing.
What's going on, what?
And although both characters may work, they're never more than what you expect, even though they should have been. Jakoby should have had significant flaws of his own, and Will Smith should have been something else than what he always is.
The goddamn robot's down!
Because this is just vanilla. On top of which, both heroes are super weak, lacking any personal goals and motivations. The only reason they become part of the wand story to begin with is because they happen to respond to a call. Then they're constantly chased around to random locations where stuff happens to them, and their ultimate reason to fight is to save the world and whatever. Or, you know, not lose their pension. In other words, what we have here is two heroes who are generic and passive. They are exactly as you expect them to be, and they don't push the story, but rather get pushed by the story. There is nothing to remember them for, aside from them being part of this special movie idea. That one of them is an orc, and the other becomes part of a magic wand story.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
You're right.
It's the idea that defines the heroes, and without it, there'd be nothing left of them. Which is the case with all the characters, to the point where it gets laughable. All LA cops are corrupt orc-hating bigots posing danger to the heroes. All Hispanic civilians are gangsters looking to kill the heroes. All orcs are brooding and intimidating, and even the one orc that was supposed to not be a criminal,
But it was a different kid. He was just tagged.
ends up being a criminal.
My son earns his colors tonight.
The Dark Elves have no specified motives other than to serve the Dark Lord simply because they're Dark Elves and that's what they do.
I am whatever my lord needs me to be.
The Elf Girl is an empty shell magic user who mostly does nothing except scream and whine.
Okay, you know what? You need to sit your crazy ass down.
Once again, the characters are fully defined and dependent on the fantasy magic idea. If the villains were not dark elves serving their lord, they'd be blank pages. If the elf girl was not trapped in the plot, she would have no existence. If Jakoby wasn't an orc wanting to be the first ever orc cop, I don't know what he'd be doing. If Will Smith wasn't Will Smith, I've got no clue who he would be. The point is that even though a movie's idea should influence characters, it cannot be the only thing that defines characters. For characters to be real, memorable people, they need their own existence outside of the story, their own motivations and goals and aspirations and lives. Jack Sparrow doesn't need the heart of Davy Jones to be Jack Sparrow. Hannibal Lecter doesn't need Buffalo Bill to be Hannibal Lecter. Ellie has passions beyond being the only one immune to the zombie virus. Even if you took these characters out of the events currently happening around them, you'd be left with something. Here, that's not the case. There's so little specificity about the villains, for example, that all they are is physically overpowered fighters fighting for evil's sake, until the end where they're no longer physically overpowered, because now the movie needs the heroes to beat them. And the reason they want the one is because, well, because it's super important, okay? But not so important that they can't borrow it around.
Lela gave an assassin her wand to kill me.
No matter how amazing your movie idea is, your characters must be able to stand beyond it on their own. And in Bright, that is not so, which is why nobody really cares.